Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who have seen the show before, this is the second time ever that I will be doing this show. The first time ever was 2 months ago, and it was my first ever solo show. It still is my first ever solo show. Couple things. One, yes, I'm wearing a big fluffy faux fur jacket because I want to, and it's January, and also it's still my birthday weekend, so I can kind of do what I want. Another thing, I'm in a weird mood today. I put a New Year's resolution on myself to stop begging people for recognition, and then something happened today that both like validated my need for that and insulted me. So it was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, I was right to be insulted, and also, hey. So I'm having a weird moment. Also, my poor little dog, my little puppy, not even 4 months old yet, is staring at me through the glass pane doors. She thinks I'm being forced to be out here because she hates the cold outdoors. So if anyone else is in the cold outdoors, they're being tortured, and she must save them. So if you hear light barking, that's her. All right. Just a fair warning. There is a sexual abuse trigger warning in this show. I will mention it again as it's coming up. I will also let you know that it is perfectly fine for you to turn your sound off, and when it is time that it's over, I will let you know when your sound can come back on. Easy peasy. We love the internet. Great. Great. Now let's get started on this, on my tragic backstory of a life. My parents shouldn't have been allowed to choose my name. I know that Genevieve, which is what Jenny is short for, sounds gorgeous, and it is in fact, well, I mean, the only reason I go by Jenny is because my preschool teachers found it hard to pronounce, and Jenny stuck ever since. But Genevieve was a total fluke. It's from a song in their favorite musical because they're both nerds. They were obsessed with the 1960s musical Camelot, and in it, Guinevere starts the song called The Simple Joys of Maidenhood by calling out to Saint Genevieve. If they hadn't been obsessed with an old-timey musical, I wouldn't have my name. They thought that Genevieve sounded like anything from a cheerleader to a lawyer, so that was Plan B. Is Plan B. Plan A was that I didn't pop out as a girl at all. Everyone decided right off the bat, before I even came out, that I was a boy. No testing done or anything, just decided. My dad had stated that since he was so manly, there was no way I could be anything but a boy. And they didn't get an ultrasound done or anything. Like I said, I was just gonna get squeezed out as a boy, like a little plop of manly toothpaste, I guess, because Bob Yosco had said it was so. Blue onesies, blue baby toys, the works. I remember having not one, but two of these big, or at least big for a kid, Precious Moments soft body dolls. They had those round, sad eyes that you see on every Precious Moments figurine, brown hair and eyes, and were in full army camo uniforms because that's what I was supposed to be. And they were going to call me Rocco. Hell, they were already calling me Rocco while I was in utero. And this, by the way, had nothing to do with Rocco's Modern Life. The show didn't premiere until September 18th of 1993. I was born January 15th, 1992. So, like, they weren't hardcore fans or anything, just New Jersey white people picking a New Jersey white person name. January 15th, 1992. A Wednesday. It's noon. So I immediately decide to leave my mother because it is lunchtime. I have and always will be a food-driven animal. And the jury's out on what I was trying to do during this exit. All we know that it was clearly theatrical somehow, possibly some kind of a hand-on-head starlet pose, or maybe like a jazz hand. But either way, I absolutely came out just hand first. While my mother is screaming in agony from having to push out the width of my head and shoulder at the same time, the doctor looks down at this horror movie scene, like right in front of him. Just a bloody baby hand reaching out of a screaming woman. And he, the most sexist prophet, just immediately says, "Oh, it's a girl who wants something." Should he have said that? Absolutely not. Was he wrong in any way? No. As soon as I'm done destroying my mother, little Genevieve is put into one of those little, they cook the babies in them to get rid of the jaundice. I don't know what they are, but it's a thing with the anti-jaundice lights or whatever. And I'm yelling because my dramatic entrance was ruined. And my dad just starts saying, "Genevieve, Genevieve," over and over. And I shut up for a little while. We all know me. It wasn't very long. January 15th, 1992, a Wednesday. There's a poem that's been around since 1838. That's part fortune-telling song, part nursery rhyme. The first three lines are, Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe. We don't need to go further than that because it does not pertain at all to my story, so who cares? Well, in very early versions of the rhyme, it was actually babies born on Friday who were full of woe due to superstitions surrounding like bad luck on Fridays. But I can assure you the adaptation we all know and love is definitely true because I am Wednesday's child and this bitch is full of woe. I was a save the marriage baby. My parents had been married for 2 years and it was not working, so they decided to have a kid. That's going to fix it. We're going to have this one thing to focus on and it's going to be great, right? Bob, my father, was equal parts dumb and angry like all the time. So when I was going to be Rocco, everything was cool, or at least as cool as they could be in the current situation, because when you're married to someone who's dumb and angry like all the time, you get what you get. When I jazz-handed my way out into the world, I was this little girl with a princessy name, and I was absolutely adorable. I was the cutest baby, full offense to all other babies. He didn't like anything that took attention away from him. That's why he started to not like my mom anymore because, well, if I had been a boy, I would have been an extension of him. As a girl, I was an extension of my mother, who was already prettier than him anyway and 10 years younger. Even though I've always looked exactly like him, when I was little, relatives and friends of my parents would actually call me Bob in drag, which meant that I learned what drag was very early, which explains a lot about me already. Y'all can go home. It's fine. You already know everything about me. I can't even remember what my parents were like as a couple. They separated when I was 2 years old and officially divorced when I was 7. The holdup was due to how much of a terrible person Bob is. He would do things like buy a pet bunny for his mother, but then tell me that it was actually a present for me while keeping it at my Nana Dorothy's place, so I'd want to visit. And then my Nana would yell at me when I told her about it. Just, things like that. He was a stay-at-home dad, but he didn't really do dad stuff at the time. He bought a Labrador Retriever puppy, never trained it, and as it grew older, it ate all of my Barbies. Her name was Ebony, and she was the dumbest dog I've ever met. Yeah, Bob would be on the internet day in and day out while my mom was at work all day. He was a pioneer. She was working at an oil processing plant. They'd actually both been at before he went full just lazy jackass. They didn't meet at that job. He actually had been a childhood best friend of my mom's older brother, who very recently is deceased now. I will say right now, if there's a 10-year age difference between people who meet as adults, that's usually fine. But when you're 16 and you meet someone who's 6 and you watch them grow up and start dating when they're in their 20s, that's just icky to me. That's just icky to me. You met them when they were a child. Ew. Okay? Ew. I can't. Should have been a red flag right there. But also, this was like the 80s and 90s, so nobody thought that way. He had one great accomplishment, though. Like I said, he was a pioneer. Other than helping create me, Bob was one of the world's first catfish. See, while he was at home all day watching me, he was on the internet chat rooms pretending to be a lesbian named Diane. He'd use a photo of my mom and would use photos of Ebony saying that her name was actually Genevieve. So whenever he'd slip up and say something about me, it'd seem like he was talking about the dog. I'm still fully convinced that this is the only reason why he bought the dog, just for this. He'd form relationships with these online lesbians and get them to send news to Diane. And also Diane had cancer, so they needed to feel really bad for her. And also it was a really good excuse to not reciprocate nudes. However, being the world's first anything means that you're gonna suck at it. This absolute fucking idiot of a man would give out a real home address to these poor women who started sending bouquets and get well soon cards to Diane. And my mom would immediately find them because she was the only one who did jack shit around the house. So she would get the mail, and she thought that maybe Bob was having an affair with someone named Diane, or that maybe they had the wrong address or something. One day my mom comes home from work and our home is surrounded by cop cars, just fully surrounded. She has no idea what's happening, but she's a social worker taking baby Genevieve out the door. She had literally arrived just in time to make sure I didn't get put in foster care. She, in a state of shock, kept asking if the neighbors were all right. Now, we don't exactly know what Bob was planning on doing, only that he had written suicidal goodbye notes to all of his girlfriends. And since they all had our address, they called the police, obviously. And the police, upon entry, found not Diane, but 2-year-old Jenny, our dog Ebony with doll legs sticking out of her mouth, and Bob with a lot of loaded, unlocked guns. My mom did not stop anyone from taking Bob away. Bob gets put in a mental institution. The day staff and night staff are, well, day and night. The day staff are all under the impression that there was a total misunderstanding and that Bob would never do any of that to hurt us. And the night staff tell my mom that this man is a violent sociopath and we need to leave the situation immediately. He's released, but he's not allowed home per my mother's instructions. My mom keeps trying to get him to sign the divorce papers, but he won't. The most outlandish excuse this man actually tried to use was that when he was in a helicopter in Australia over a waterfall, he let the loose divorce paper documents just fall out the door, as if things couldn't be reprinted, and as if you kept loose documents with you that were important documents in your helicopter. During their 5-year separation, we would find that Bob had purposefully saved images to our home computer, which he barely used because he didn't even live there anymore, of him illegally marrying someone else. One of his online girlfriends he met while catfishing was bisexual. Lucky him. Also like 18 years old, while he was around 44 at the time. Gross. He purposefully married her while still married to my mom, so it wouldn't be legally binding and he could just bounce at any time, which seems smart. But I must also remind you that this man is very, very dumb. After my mom found these photos, he brought her to us. He pretended that she was a cousin he had never met. Again, my mom had known him since she was a child. Gave her a fake name, but kept forgetting to call her by the fake name. And the two of them tried to convince me to run off with them to Australia. I am probably never going to go to Australia in my entire life. I don't care if that's where they grow Hemsworths. I'm not going. After a while, Bob kind of sort of left us alone. My mom started leaving me with Nana Dorothy while she went to work because we were way too poor to have a babysitter, and the family on my mom's side was a little too afraid of Bob to take care of me, rightfully so. My Nana's house was insane, way too massive for what they could afford, and on a decent plot of land as well. There were always these like fairy tale amounts of tiger lilies growing outside. Bob's 2 half-brothers lived with her, John and Joe. John always had cute German shepherds, and he grew tomatoes outside. And Joe always wanted me to eat coffee-flavored ice cream as a child, and had a full koi and goldfish pond in the yard. My pop-up, I barely remember. He ran off with his nurse a few years into my existence. Frankly, I would have run away from my Nana, too, if given the opportunity, especially with a hot nurse. Nana was mean-spirited, spoiled, and rude. We lived in New Jersey, so please just picture an aging Jersey Shore stereotype. That's her, just Nana Snooki. That's what was happening here. My very first word was me crankily yelling, "Mom, Mom," when my mom came to pick me up one time because she was taking too long to get us the fuck out of that house. Eventually, my Nana kept trying to pressure my mom into taking Bob back. I'm sure she knew nothing about my teenage stepmom / Bob's long-lost cousin. She probably only heard sob stories from Bob when he wanted something, anything. My mom couldn't take it anymore, so she spent money we didn't have to put me in a daycare in an attempt to get me into a better situation. It wasn't worse by any means, but it wound up being more of a lateral move. God, Rainbow World. I genuinely don't remember a ton of my childhood at the preschool I went to. I mean, I don't remember a ton of my childhood in general. I blocked many, many things out that we're not even going to talk about here, but I may or may not have been dealing with a ton of trauma. I do remember that for some vastly unknown reasons. The teachers at my preschool hated me. Like, actually hated me. Didn't help with the trauma thing. And I don't mean they were like a little mean to me. There was one teacher in particular, Miss Jen with a J, who despised me. I have no idea how tall she was, but she looked like a giant to me. I also can't remember her face at all. She had lots of blonde hair, cut into a bit of like a Rachel that was so popular back then. And she hated me for real. I don't know what I ever did to her aside from normal child stuff. I wasn't there at that preschool past the age of 4 years old. For instance, we would have silent reading time, but also during this reading time, you had to pay attention to when your name was being called, as they would call us one by one to the snack time table. I looked up on more than one occasion to see all of the kids staring at me, and Miss Jen saying that they had been calling me for ages, and no one had gotten to eat, and it was all my fault. Granted, ages always turned out to be 1 or 2 times before we decided to have everyone passive aggressively stare at you until the silence, you felt waves of it coming at you in discomfort. But sorry, I was way too into my Peter Pan book. Okay, I'm sorry to be punished for reading. I don't know. Parents would often tell my mom that they'd see me sitting outside the classroom in timeout when they dropped some kids off, and then when they came back to pick up their kids, I would still be in the same spot, having not been allowed to come in the entire day. One time, Miss Jen told me at the very beginning of the day that my mom had called the school and said that I had lied to her. So as punishment for lying to my mother, I had to sit against the wall during playtime and just watch. It gave me some trust issues with my mom until I talked to her about it one day, and it turns out she literally never called them except to complain about how poorly they were treating me. This woman lied to put a child in timeout. For why? We don't know. I wasn't an angry child or anything. I was extremely sensitive and cried a lot, but I wasn't violent or anything. So basically the same as I am now. I actually did an incredibly cringy thing where sometimes when I thought I wasn't going to be heard and I'd get like really sad and like introspective for a 4-year-old, I would pretend that I was in a musical and start looking off in the distance and sing a ballad about how my life was so hard. I tried to make it rhyme even. It was very difficult. I stopped after I immediately saw 2 girls doing the exact same thing, each singing their own ballad like 3 feet away from me. The embarrassment of how it looked, sounded, and felt just crashed over me like a tsunami. But I would get massive panic attacks whenever my mom brought up leaving the place. Turns out I had some separation anxiety. Wonder why. Rainbow World became my before and after school care when I started kindergarten, and I would get dropped off at Rainbow World, and then they'd bus us over to Land of Pines, where our mascot was a pirate. Yes, that makes sense. I was there for a year. Then my mom somehow got me into a completely different school called Ramtown, which had its own built-in aftercare program. So I didn't need to be around Miss Jen anymore at any point whatsoever. So I was surprised to find out how happy I was being away from Rainbow World. The only thing I missed were the boys. Yep, I was unsurprisingly quite the flirt. I had 3 boyfriends throughout my time at Rainbow World. In fact, in the 2nd grade, I had written a poem about my former love life at Rainbow World. I read it out loud. I don't know, actually. It was this thing where we read stuff out in a big brownish room with both parents and children, maybe a parents' night. I don't know. Anyway, I'm very vain. So here's the poem. Dug it up. All right. Hey, guys. I know I'm very young, but I still had quite a life. I've had a couple boyfriends. Someday I'll be a wife. First there was my Kenny, and yes, our names rhyme. A bright and shiny penny I wouldn't trade for a dime. After there was Christopher, who was sweet as a rose, until one day he got jealous and bit me on the nose. Finally, Anthony, the one who got away. He gave me a teddy bear that I treasure to this day. So see, I've had some heartbreak. It is quite clear to see that someday my poor mommy will be quite worried for me. Let's dissect this a little bit together now, shall we? First of all, yes, Kenny, my first boyfriend from preschool. He literally chased me around saying, Jenny, Jenny, spend a penny. And I don't know what it means or what he was trying to convey, but that line worked hard because I was in love with him. I was in love with him. I love how I said I wouldn't trade him for a dime and then I immediately talk about another boy. This is great. This is such a mood. Yes, Christopher did bite me on the nose because that was the day that Anthony had started school and I was smitten from the get-go, and Christopher knew. Anthony did give me a bear the day I left Rainbow World for good. It was a black bear with a brown muzzle, a beanie body, but not a beanie baby, and it had a red ribbon around its neck with white hearts on it. One of the very few boyfriends to even ever give me a present still to this day. Which is even more sad it is to say out loud than the first time I did back in November, and then also when I wrote it down before that. So it just gets worse every time. I also felt like such a dweeb afterwards because I had given him pencils with his name on them. He gave me a love bear, and I gave him pencils with his name on them. It would be very mean to leave out that Kenny had got me a Barney book one time, which was very, very on brand at the time for me because my aesthetic for Barney was strong. but he also wanted to give me a princess dress because even back then I was a full princess, but his mom said no, so he went for the second best thing. Barney. I didn't have any boyfriends in Ramtown, and startlingly few the years and years after. I still liked boys a lot. Another one for lack of trying. Just boys didn't like me, which was their loss. At Ramtown, what I lacked in torrid toddler affairs, I made up for in creative talent. Exhibit A being that little, I excelled in my art classes. I even made a self-portrait once because, of course, I did. Completely cut out of different colors of construction paper and yarn. I also made a clay sculpture that fit in the palm of my hand. It was a green bowl with a bunch of fruit in it. I, at the time, was such a good singer that in the second grade, the choir teacher had approached me after class and said that while advanced choir normally begins only at 4th and 5th grade, she wanted me to join next year as a 3rd grader. And I told her I couldn't because next year I'd be living in another state. Right before I started the 3rd grade, my mom and I moved to West Virginia. She had recently started college. Turns out that higher level education is cheaper in West Virginia than it is for us living in New Jersey as residents. Plus, we had some people there that told us that the city parts were like a total dupe for where we lived in Jersey, so it'd be like not a huge culture shock for us, and we'd love it. They either lied to us or they were very stupid. The first thing that we should have done when we got to West Virginia was pick a church. That's the first thing we should have done. Neither my mom nor myself were religious at all, nor were we very proper church ladies. I don't know. Like one of my first full sentences was, "Mommy, that's a big fucking bus." And when the South Park movie came out in 1999, I memorized the soundtrack and choreographed dances to the songs with my Barbies. Particularly, I was fond of Uncle Fucker and Kyle's Mom's a Bitch. Those are my favorites, and I can still sing them from memory right now. So yeah, not like West Virginia church people. Not saying that like church people are scary, but like we were not church people. We very much at the time did not want to be church people. But as it turns out, when I was growing up with a lot of people who they all got things from each other and from the teachers that they all went to church with. So we should have picked a church. So here I am, new kid, single mother, pretty poor, whose family didn't go to church. Boys still didn't like me at all. Still their loss. Apparently I had peaked back in New Jersey because from then through high school I was told that I couldn't sing, which made me really self-conscious and made me stop singing and my throat closes up. And not cool enough for anyone to ever want to hang out with. I never really thought that I was a great singer, but good enough for like a character actor. And yes, by then I knew I wanted to be an actor. My mom was screwed. I had to act out storybooks with my mom instead of having her read them to me. There was a TV show in 1998 called Jessie, starring Christina Applegate, if anyone remembers it. It had an episode based on two characters being hypnotized and thinking they were Romeo and Juliet. So I found my mom's old copy of Romeo and Juliet, and I memorized Juliet's balcony monologue for fun. I was 6 years old. Again, my mom was screwed. I already knew I wanted to be an actor. I was doomed from an early age. 5th grade specifically was a whole weird foggy memory for me in a lot of ways. Not just because I was thought to be good at math, but I really wasn't actually good at math. I just knew my way around a calculator, and no one knew what to do with this information. That was also the year I learned about 9/11, even though it had happened a whole year prior to then. Just no one had bothered to tell me. But it was also the last time I ever looked like a child. I'm not saying I never looked young again. Hopefully some of you still look at me and they think, wow, that's a young woman, even though I've just turned 29 on Friday. But the summer between 5th and 6th grade, my body exploded. Puberty hit me like a truck. I grew almost immediately to a terrifying 5'9". My figure went from Tina Belcher to Betty Boop, but I still had Tina Belcher's personality, so everyone was confused. And of course, everyone decided that since I had boobs, I must be using them to hypnotize men into wanting me. 6th grade was when I, in my rumored slutty glory, joined the Children's Theater Company in town. The Children's Theater Company. There was zero competition. And I had wanted to be an actor for so long, so even though my mom and I didn't have a lot of money, she paid for me to be a part of this Children's Theater Company, which was a terrible idea. But we didn't know that then. We should have, though, because the date I joined was September 3rd of 2003, also known as a fucking Wednesday. It was run by a terrible, miserable woman. She had clearly loudly wanted to be an actor herself and fell into the trap of, you can teach acting. This, you should know, is a bad idea. If you want to direct, write, produce, choreograph even, yeah, totally, go teach acting. But if you just want to be an actor and have zero interest in any of that, teaching acting is just watching a bunch of performers younger than you, with their whole lives ahead of you, filled with opportunities that you're never going to get again, taking parts that it would be weird for you to cast yourself in because you'd be acting opposite a bunch of children. Okay? Don't do it. Let someone who actually wants to teach have that, please. Since I didn't have a dad for her to flirt with, I myself wasn't male, and my mom didn't have money to throw at any costumes or set pieces, I was always put in the chorus, which was fine, except that I was also treated badly. That's the only way I can put it, just badly. Look, she knew I was a good actor. The other parents knew that I was a good actor and pointed out to her how good I was after performances. Not to like toot my own horn, but toot toot, I was very good. She didn't like that for whatever reason. So I was constantly in this limbo of given very small parts in like a large show where I'm lauded for my acting abilities, but not allowed to really have anything else or grow as a performer or learn as a student. She started a lot of rumors about me to make up for the lack of growth in the company, which was also very mature of her. This place also really shirked child labor laws and made us scrub the bathrooms and stuff after every rehearsal, but I didn't mind that. I didn't even mind the weird treatment from the lady who ran it, or any of the diva kids, or the weird competition, because I had a crush. My first real person crush since Rainbow World. I'd only ever liked celebrities really before this guy. I'd found boys cute, but I only ever like focused on like Greg Brady or Davy Jones from Nick at Night reruns because I stayed up really late. But he was a celebrity in the company, so I guess I have a type. I learned early on that I'm attracted to talent, which is a bad idea. Right now, for this show, we're going to call him Brody. It's not his actual name, but you got an immediate image in your head when I said the word Brody, so that is what he looks like. Just letting you know. Anyway, Brody was always the lead in basically every show. He was the shining star of the company. He'd also already let it go to his head. He was years and years older than me, which right now it's not that big of an age difference, but like when I joined at 11, he was 15. He was also homeschooled at the time, and as soon as he hit 16, the legal age to drop out in the state, he dropped out. He was offered full scholarships anyway, and a bunch of other opportunities that he refused because he was too talented for help. I'm still not really sure. I was obsessed with Brody for years, and I knew he knew. And I didn't care because he took pity on me. He'd occasionally hang out with me and we'd listen to burnt CDs in his room, always door open, his mom always on the couch looking directly into the room. And I really grew to treasure those moments because I thought that if I was cool enough to hang out with, maybe someday when I was older, I'd be cool enough to date. But I knew even like at that moment, the age difference was creepy. He didn't. Okay. This is where we get really dark. Some triggering stuff might come up for some of y'all. In a stage performance, I would let you know that it's totally cool to like put in some earbuds, zone out for a minute, leave, come back, and I would like come get you when it was over. The virtual world has given us a much better solution. Mute your device. You absolutely can. Just turn the sound down on your device whenever you're like watching on your phone, your laptop, whatever. When I'm done with the scary bits, I am going to throw up this banner and wave my arms around a lot. So you know that it's time. You know that it's time. I'll give you all also a minute to mute. Okay. So my crush on Brody was a few years deep at this point. I was 13 years old. Somewhere between 7th and 8th grade. On the weekends, I was going to Pittsburgh to be in a Renaissance festival and getting paid for it. Not enough to make up for gas and costumes, and we were still super poor, but it was my first paying job as an actor, so that was really awesome. And I was so tall that everyone thought I was one of the adult actors, so that was also really cool for me. And I was still getting to hang out with my crush. I hadn't bored him away yet. Life was great. And then one day he kissed me, and it was weird. I didn't know what to do. It was my first kiss with my crush, who was 17 years old and who knew that I was 13 years old. He had quite a bit of a reputation of dating everyone in the company. I guess he thought it was my turn. I didn't want it to be my turn, but again, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't really tell people because they all knew that I had a crush on him, so what would be the problem, you know? I didn't want to offend him, and anyway, he knew how young I was, so there's only so far he would take it, right? August 17th of 2005, a Wednesday. My longest real person crush holding me down on his bed. I had my period, and I hoped that my massive bloody pad would deter him. No. So there I am, all clothes still on, boots and jeans and underwear around my ankles. I was wearing this green turtleneck cable knit sweater that was too hot for the weather outside, but I always favored style over function anyway. Now I was going back and forth between sweltering and grateful that it was too bulky to really see my shape through. Door open, his mom on the couch, pretending to watch TV this time, but we made eye contact a few times. Time is moving fast and slow all at once. I didn't scream because, well, I didn't know I had that option. I figured I must have led him on, led him to believe that I wanted this. So I stopped crying, and tried to, as they say, lay back and enjoy it. But in that moment, pretending to purposefully be having sex for the first time, I realized that he was very bad at this. He was so bad at this. It was so boring. I was bored. And he smelled awful. How did I never notice how bad he smelled before? So I decided to stop pretending and go back to panic. At least I could focus on that instead of how incredibly just dull this moment was if I had actually wanted it. Oh my God. I have no idea how long it lasted. I know that I left his apartment afterwards to wait for my mom outside, which I had never done before. I usually wanted to spend every lasting second with Brody. Now I just wanted him as far away from me as possible. But he followed me outside, also a deviation from the norm. Usually I'd be following him everywhere. But he wanted to tell me how happy he was that he finally had sex and that no one would ever believe him. They believed him. Okay, it's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. I'm still going to lightly reference things because obviously this part is about how my life took a downturn from there. But the scary detail parts are over. So we're good. When a boy is spreading a rumor about you, no matter how untrue it is, people will always believe him anyway. That's just the rules of life. But in this case, it was easy for them to believe anyway that I, a girl who had been trailing after him for years, willingly took his virginity. I also had all the horror rumors swirling around me anyway, but now everyone had proof, so that was cute for them. A few friends were mad at me when they found out. They thought that I'd been keeping some sort of sexy secret from them, not that I was processing a ton of trauma. One was really mad at me because she also had a crush on him. We both openly acknowledged our crushes on him because we both knew that we were too young for him, but to her, this seemed like a betrayal. That I had just snuck in and took any chance she had away from her. I didn't have the language at the time to explain that. No, he very much was all hers if she wanted him because I never wanted to be alone with him again. Side note, I found out years later, the minute he turned 18, the lady who ran the children's theater company started sleeping with him. Her distaste for me makes a lot more sense now. I had a crush on her crush. The entirety of my last year in middle school was weird for me. 8th grade. So weird. I was understandably traumatized regarding real person crushes. There was a boy who I really liked, he was in my science class. It was weird. I never made any sort of a move because I was worried. Also, I was just worried that he was making fun of me because his friend would always tell me that he was interested in me, but said friend had always made fun of me and my group of friends. I don't know. Either Either he'd hurt me too, or that he'd be disgusted by me or embarrassed by me or something. Josiah, if you're out there, please know that now that I've begun to lightly process what happened to me, I regret not telling you that I thought you were very cute and I liked how green your eyes were. Weird thing to say to someone now, 14 years later after the fact, but also it's my birthday weekend. So, the thing about solo shows is that there's no one on stage to like stop you from doing something. Sure, there's like directors and producers and stuff, but everything up here is fully my fault. High school, woof. I was fresh meat for the boys in high school. And a lot of them didn't know about all the rumors that had followed me in middle school. So I actually finally dated boys. I still had a lot of issues picking the right ones, and I had some major separation anxiety, so I just let them cheat on me all over the place, or worse, try to convince me that they legitimately had ice powers. That boy is a whole show in himself that I cannot even fit in right now. I became such a people pleaser in an attempt to get people to like me, even just a little bit, that I became the girl who carries an entire group project, who does all of the work, that doesn't complain when I don't get the help that I ask for. And we still get an A because I'm good at stuff. I'm still that girl. Some days it's easier. Some days I get to pick my group, which is great. And even if they can't help, they're still supportive. Other days, either my group has been picked for me, or my group just somehow loses their minds and let me down. Any group that I'm in is always a toss-up on whether or not it's going to be helpful for me, which is part of why I started producing my own work, so I could pick my own groups as much as possible. Look, normally I always try and make new memories out of something bad. I call it exercising the demons. Like if a mean girl borrowed a dress of mine for a show, and instead of hiding it away forever or donating it, I'd stick on 3 more ingenues in a row, so I wouldn't think of her whenever I saw it. Or if someone breaks up with me in front of a restaurant, I'm eating there with friends for the next 5 meals, so like I don't cry whenever I see it. I don't want my life to be haunted with things I can't use, places I can't go, all because of people. People have always let me down. But how can you do that with your own body? You can't. I developed a lot of body dysmorphia that I still struggle with. In high school at my lightest, I was 120 pounds. For reference, I am currently about 150, and I'm happy to provide a visual aid for anyone who thinks that may not be good. That swimsuit was named after me, by the way. It's called the Genevieve, and you can purchase it. Hooray for that. Still very vain, no matter what. I'm still the same romance-filled little girl who will write a poem about a boy biting my nose to get a laugh. And when I look objectively at myself in photos, I can pretend that that's not me. And I can much more easily see what I look like, which is why I take a lot of photos of myself, because that's the only way I know what I actually look like. Spoiler, hot. Who knew? But every time I look at myself in a mirror or a reflection, or unfortunately in this digital age video, I still get this nagging feeling that things are too big for what they should be. Things aren't right for, I'm not put together correctly. And no matter what I do, it's not good enough. I'm clearly not smart enough or talented enough to make up for that. My entire life, my entire childhood, I was told that. So I just got to go harder all the time, because a decision about my body was made without my input. And as someone who very much loves a schedule and explicitly clear instructions, I do not appreciate decisions about me being made without my input. This is why I have so many photos of myself, not just on my Instagram, but like straight up ordered from Walgreens and sent to my home. Just physical photos of me everywhere. Everywhere. I need the reminder that I'm okay. I do, however, conceptually, on my logical days, understand that this is not on me. That a crying 13-year-old girl is not a clear sign of consent. That a grown woman's obsession with a boy I once had a crush on isn't my fault and doesn't mean that I was a bad person for existing. That my body type doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing in life. And even if I am, fuck you, who cares? I'm obviously not done healing. I'm not sure I ever will be. I hope so, but everything before August 17th of 2005 seems like the beginning of the week. It's not great. I mean, who even likes Mondays? But it's trucking along. And yeah, things in my adult life are good half of the time. I have a cute little puppy. I just won an award at a festival for a show that I wrote and edited all by myself. I've been writing and doing all this stuff. Tomorrow, Sour Grapes Productions is producing our 40th original production and our 48th show overall. So that's pretty great. But I don't know, a lot of my personal life is still garbage, and a lot of people don't even care about my projects, don't even remember that they exist. I had to make a New Year's resolution to myself to stop begging people to respect my work. That's how sad my life is right now regarding that. It just, because of this weird limbo, it feels like a forever hump day. A perpetual Wednesday. Stuck in the middle of the week that was already not going great. And I'd love to look forward to the weekend, but it's hard when it seems to not be anywhere in sight. At this point, I'll even settle for a fucking Thursday. I'll let you know if I ever make it there.